and the piece of paper said it was from a law firm. And I looked at Sue and I said, do you think this is good news or bad news? And it turned out it was the first envelope that we received from Summit Carbon saying that they wanted to put a pipeline across our farm. My first gut, am I speaking loud enough and clear enough? Everybody? Okay. My first gut reaction was we had spent tens of thousands of dollars on tile. Our farms are in the prairie pothole region of northern Greene County, and our farms are not productive without tile drainage. We learned that when we started putting yield monitors in our combines. The first thing we learned was we needed more tile. This pipeline is going to be installed 4 foot from the soil surface to the top of the pipeline. That is going to cut through almost all of our tile. And you saw the map of the picture of the heavy equipment. The company says they will repair my tile. I don't think it'll ever work as good as it does now. That there's no way that they can repair it. And then down the road, when I do have a problem, no private tile contractor is going to want to go near the CO2 pipeline, because if it gets nicked, it leaks, him and his employees are instantly dead. So my first gut reaction was tile, and then I started learning about CO2 gas. And I'd heard the stories that the land agents were saying it's no different than the CO2 in your pipeline. And then I started learning that natural gas pipelines, big mains out in the country, operate at about 900 PSI. This CO2 pipeline is going to operate at 2100 PSI. So think about the engineering required to make sure that that pipe doesn't leak or rupture. I don't think it can be done. At some point, there's going to be a leak or a rupture. They use different terms. If you're looking into this on your own, you'll either read about dispersion modeling or what's the other term? Or plume modeling. And that's where Summit has done it, that they've looked at the topography, the elevations. They know if there's a leak or a rupture where the CO2 will flow to, but they will not release it to the public because they know it would make them look bad. We got a little indication, Navigator, when they were trying to get approved in South Dakota, they released their plume modeling, and probably for an 8-inch line, which will probably end up being what goes through Greene County because they're going to hook on to Coon Rapids and Menlo. On an 8-inch line, the kill zone is 1,800 feet on either side. So if your house is within 1,800 feet of this pipeline, you will be dead in less than 4 minutes. Summit is trying to softball that and say, don't worry about it, that we're going to give equipment to your local EMS and that we're going to train them. But we have learned that the training that Summit has been doing so far is that they go and they explain to the local EMS that their job will be to barricade the roads and not let anybody into the kill zone. That the EMS is not supposed to go into the kill zone. So if you're in the kill zone, you're on your own. I'm trying to think of some other highlights. So I started looking into liability insurance. So what if I were a tile contractor working for me does accidentally nick it? Farm Bureau insurance will not cover me. Nationwide insurance will not cover me. Currently, Summit's claiming that they'll have insurance and don't worry about it. But there was a situation out in Nebraska. 2 brothers were using a bulldozer and an excavator to clear a fence row. they nicked a Magellan pipeline. Fortunately, it was only pumping diesel fuel, and they caused damage, leakage of material, business interruption while it had to be repaired, and whatever else goes with a pipeline leak. But anyway, Magellan told the two farming brothers, don't worry about it, we've got insurance. And I think the company was Zurich. So Zurich pays off to the pipeline company. You think everything's good? Zurich turns around and sues the two brothers. That Zurich went after the two brothers to recover the money that they paid to Magellan. So it's just not good. If you do end up talking to a land agent, ask them to leave a copy of the easement. There will be a paragraph that says that Summit can't remember all the exact words, lease, sell, mortgage, transfer. They once you sign the easement, they can do anything they want to. And what's unusual also about this easement is that it's forever. So if you sign it, your great-grandchildren, if you still own the farm, your great-grandchildren will be subject to the terms of this lease. The people I've talked to have never heard of a infinity lease that goes on forever. Trying to think of any other highlights.
Who owns it?
Summit makes big claims about being transparent and trying to be a good neighbor. They won't disclose plume modeling or dispersion modeling because they know it'll make them look bad. They also will not disclose who the investors are. A little bit of digging have figured out that the number 2 investor is Continental Resources. The CEO is Harold Hamm, and he's the fracking king of North Dakota. So, I don't know if you remember, 10 or 15 years ago, Oklahoma was having earthquakes and contaminated groundwater. That was from fracking, and that they were using fine sand, chemicals, and water. And so, because of contaminated groundwater and earthquakes, they decided they better quit doing that. So the oil industry has switched to using CO2 for fracking. That they pump the CO2 into the ground, that moves the crude oil around to where it's easier for them to pump it to the surface. So that's her term. You'll either hear fracking or enhanced oil recovery. Trying to think.
John Deere.
Oh, investors. We have uncovered a few. This Continental Resources, Harold Hamm's the number 2 investor. And he's known for fracking, so that makes you think when they tell you they're saving the climate, that they're lying to you, that they're actually going to use it for enhanced oil recovery. John Deere has put $500 million, or 500,000, I can't remember. The numbers are crazy.
Yeah.
The whole project now with phase 2 is $8.5 billion. And so if they're investing that much money, you know they have high hopes for collecting a lot of tax credits. One other investor that I think is 10%,
The SK&E.
SK&E, a company out of South Korea, and they've gotten in trouble with the U.S. government for defrauding the Defense Department. So this the whole thing, they claim they're transparent, but they won't disclose how dangerous it is, and they won't disclose who their investors are. So it makes you scratch your head. So my objections have evolved with time. I've been aware of this since August of 2021. And so I've kind of landed on 2 prime things that really get me excited. One is the eminent domain of use. Do you think it's okay for government after being pressured by politicians to use eminent domain to take land from one private individual and give it to another private individual. This pipeline is basically a private individual. And so there's no public use that can justify eminent domain in this case. And then my second issue now is we just learned in the last 9 months or less that each ethanol plant is going to have a compressor. They're going to collect this CO2 and they have to compress it into a liquid, and it'll be at 2100 psi. Tremendous amount of heat. Each ethanol plant's going to have multiple wells probably, and depending on the size of the ethanol plant, we'll use between 25 and 55 million gallons of water to cool the compressors. So just abuse of eminent domain and taking our water that we need for the future are my two primary concerns right now. And my front door is 1,150 feet from the pipeline. Will there be a leak during the night? And will I be dead in the morning and not even know it? So it won't be very comfortable knowing there's that much danger that close to my front door. So, thank you, and I'm available. I'm going to stick around if anybody wants to ask any other questions.